Abronia require relatively high humidity compared to many other reptiles, but for the most part, you still want to have those humidity drops during the day just because that's what happens naturally in the cloud forest. So for the most part, I keep my Abronia for most of the year around 40 to 50% humidity. You're going to see humidity spikes throughout the day and drops, but you want to keep them around that 40 to 50% range due to the fact that they are prone to respiratory issues. So if you don't have a good enough airflow and you have high humidity, they can develop respiratory issues, which they're known to getting and don't do very well when they do get them. So allowing that humidity to drop during the day where you don't mist all day, you kind of let it dry out, and then you spike it towards the end of the day, overnight and in the mornings is the best way to go about it. So when we move into those overnight times where we want to spike the humidity, we really want to see that humidity at the 80, 90 to all the way to 100% if we can throughout the night. We want to keep that humidity as high as we can throughout the night and then dial it back through the day. Having some sort of fans in your enclosure during the day also helps regulate it. I have mine hooked up to a hydrostat where if it gets too low in humidity, those fans turn off and allow the humidity to pick back up and then they turn back on again. So I'd recommend looking into getting some fans that you can control to allow better airflow, especially if you go with a PVC enclosure. That way you can make sure air's moving in there, but it's also regulating the humidity where it's not drying out too much, but keeps it relatively high. Like I said, 40 to 50% is where you want to keep these during the day. How you go about achieving that is different in every enclosure. I've seen people use misters and also use humidifiers where they use reverse osmosis water or RO water. That way they have a mist that comes into their enclosure. I think these are perfectly fine. I don't currently use them in my enclosures due to the fact that I have PVC enclosures, and the misting system, which are Mist Kings, are relatively good enough at keeping the humidity high, and they're so well planted that those things kind of hold the humidity in it as it is. However, if you go with a hybrid or mesh enclosure, you will probably want to look into using some sort of humidifier. One caveat to using humidifiers is you will need to clean them as they can build up bacteria such as algae and other things that could also get into the air supply of your Abronia. So that's something to keep in mind. It's perfectly fine if using them. It's just something you'll have to keep in mind as you work with them. One thing I would like to mention during this humidity section is Abronia do shed, and they do shed in one piece similarly to a snake, meaning they need humidity around those times where they're going to shed. Otherwise, they could have issues shedding and get stuck shed. It's kind of hard to tell exactly when they're going to shed. They do shed a couple times a year. However, one thing you will notice with your Abronia is a change of color. They wouldn't necessarily go blue like a snake does, where they eyes glass over and stuff like that, but you'll notice their colors aren't as vibrant. And then within a week or two of that is usually when they're going to shed. So it's okay to spike the humidity a little bit higher, about 45% to 55%, a little higher than normal, just to allow for better shedding.